Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing the little talky videos again like we did previously with Little Nightmares. And today we're going to be talking about what I want to see as an enemy in Little Nightmares 3. Now of course, with that being said, let me know what you want to see too. I'd be really intrigued to see if there's anything I miss or something I don't come up with. We're going to stay truthful to the universe of the Little Nightmares world and of course what's going on inside it, and we're going to talk about the monsters that we know of per se. But with that being said, of course this is going to contain spoilers for Little Nightmares 1, Little Nightmares 2, Very Little Nightmares, all the comics I believe, and including the old comics, and of course Very Little Nightmares and the Sounds of Nightmares I believe. But with that out the way and all the spoilers and introductions done, I want to get into this video. Of course, this video is, again, like the previous one, sort of scripted, not necessarily scripted. It's more bullet pointed about the areas I want to talk about. So if it's a little bit loose and, you know, it's all over the place, let me know comments and, you know, let me know your feedback. This year we're going to be trying to do... We're still pushing that 100k, but of course this year is going to be a very interesting one. We've got Little Nightmares 3 coming this year, so it is going to be fantastic. I am so buzzing for that game, like beyond belief. I cannot wait for Little Nightmares 3. I generally cannot. I want it now. But with that being said, let's get into it. So, the first monster, of course, I think is worth noting, is one that we sort of know we're going to see. We are going to see the Monster Baby. Now, the Monster Baby I find quite an interesting choice, especially because of the original placement of the Monster Baby, which we all know was in the Little Nightmares 2 key art feature. I believe if you owned the digital collection, you got to see all the concept art and whatnot, and of course Monster Baby is in there. And I do love the fact that Supermassive Games have gone back and took some of Tarsia's initial sort of characters, if you will, and use them going forward. And interestingly, I think the Monster Baby has such a unique design for what they are. I think with the one statue eye and of course the one baby broken sort of like floppy eyelid thingy thing, it really reminds you of like those real old sort of porcelain dolls. We know we've actually seen porcelain children before in the Little Nightmares world, and of course that leads me a little bit on later to my next one, but I don't want to touch upon them just yet. And of course that is the Shadow Kids, because of course their masks are porcelain, as we found out in the Residence DLC. Oh, and of course, there we go, spoiler for the DLCs. I knew that was one I forgot, I knew it. But I feel like the Monster Baby is going to be, and I don't know how to sort of like word this, but I feel that because it is a baby and behaving like a baby, it's just as scary, because it's unpredictable, it's heavy-handed, and as we've seen from the video, it just goes around the necropolis and just absolutely shatters everything inside it and destroys whatever is in their path. So I am really intrigued to finally meet the Monster Baby. I kind of hope, and I'm very 50-50 on this. You'll have to let me know what you think about this, but I kind of want there to be a Little Nightmares 3 demo, but I also don't want there to be a Little Nightmares 3 demo. I'm very in between with that. I think I more lean towards I would love a demo though, to be honest. I would love to get my hands on some Little Nightmares content. Just even if it is the snippet of what we saw in the the B-roll footage of them just going through that part of the necropolis in the spiral. I would really enjoy it. I would love to actually get my hands on it myself. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to sort of meeting the Monster Baby in the game. I actually think they're going to end up being one of those sort of enemies that you love in the end, like the sort of how everyone really likes Roger, the janitor, and things like that. I think they're actually going to end up turning in that sort of way, and I'm intrigued. I cannot wait to generally meet the Monster Baby on the field of Little Nightmares. And of course, talking of Little Nightmares 3's trailer and of course the B-roll and whatnot, I also am super looking forward to the Drain Monster. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the Drain Monster because, one, the appearance is quite fascinating, and I wonder if there's going to be a few instances where we're going to be going through drain pipes, of course, in Little Nightmares 3, and you're just going to see those claws come at you, and it definitely, because of the mystery around it and just the fact that we can't see it, we can only hear it and just see the only thing you'll ever see of the monster, and that's the last sight of the nails coming at you. I'm really intrigued to see where they go with this design in particular, because I did want to call back to Little Nightmares The Depths, where we hear a monster crawling around in the pipes at the start of the chapter. I remember I made a theory a long time ago where I was like, oh, perhaps whoever is in the pipe is another child, or it's like the torch coming down. Oh no, I said it was not the runaway girl, the flashlight girl. That's who I said it was. I said it was her coming down the drain pipes. But now knowing that there might well be a drain monster lurking in Little Nightmares world, I actually am gonna wonder if this is gonna be like another callback to the original Little Nightmares, which again I am all for. Absolutely all for it. So I'm really intrigued to see where they go with that. And one other thing I did want to bring up as well in relation to some like actual evidence or source material is the mannequins returning. And I say this because, of course, in the Little Nightmares, I'll show it on the screen and whatnot, but in the Little Nightmares key art, we can actually see some of the sort of stances and some of the character outlines of these creatures. I think the mannequins is going to be a very common theme going from Little Nightmares. I just feel like it's a very eerie type thing to have inside the world. I mean, look at the family in the cabin for the Little Nightmares 2. One of the theories I used to say about that as well is I think they were part mannequins, because that's why they were stuck in that light in the dining room. And I do wonder if we're going to see some like of course variations of the mannequins, not necessarily tied to the hospital like in Little Nightmares 2, but perhaps like shop windows and things like that for Little Nightmares 3, which I am all for. I love that kind of like enemy that doesn't move until you move. It really brings that kind of tension back into it whenever you get that sense of, oh, I might be safe. Oh, no you ain't. And just to have that tense moment of running away or trying to run away and just evade these creatures, because it's not only how they sound, it's how they walk, and it sends shivers down my spine. I love and hate it at the same time. So we're going to detour a little bit away from the actual game and the source material, if you will. I want to see in Little Nightmares 3 some sort of callback to the North Wind. Now, it was a long-running joke in the channel in the very early stages of covering Little Nightmares. I'm talking like 20,000 subs maybe we were. Where I actually would often refer the North Wind a lot. But it became like a running thing for me to sort of say the North Wind. But I actually think for Little Nightmares 3, this might well be the perfect setting. And I say this for numerous reasons, two of which will be the effect that we see at the end of the Little Nightmares B-roll footage with the closing surrounding dark, but that can also go two ways, which I'll explain later. So the closing and the fog coming around Low and Alone, and also the amount of usage of ravens again. Now, of course, for those that don't know, the original sort of 2017 comics, the North Wind was heavily suggested to, well, one, be the wind, if you will, and just have like an immense power that you can't see coming. And he had like a symbolism of one of the eyes you see around the moor and things, but ravens, it was a massive, or a crow, if you will. I think it was mainly a crow, sorry, not a raven. But of course, and we know as well, those animals are associated mainly with death. And of course, if you read the old comics, this is what the North Wind basically brought you. It was death, it was destruction, it was an odd back and forth. And we'll get onto this in a second, because I do want to talk a little bit about the Ferryman coming back as well. I actually think the Ferryman is going to play a massive role in Little Nightmares 3. But the sort of exchange that the North Wind had in the old comics, talking about the Ferryman, was very odd. It was as if they were competing with each other. Now, I will go on to say, it's almost as if the Ferryman enjoys bringing people over, but perhaps not corrupting them here, if that makes sense. I feel like the Ferryman's main goal is just to get people here, or to sway them here, or to manipulate them here and things like that, and just cause suffering. Whereas I feel like the North Wind wants to take that even further. I feel like the reason why we might see all these enemies within Little Nightmares, I think it has something to do with the North Wind twisting them and recreating a world inside of the nowhere that just absolutely fills them with, you know, dread, horror, and puts them in their most horrible sort of appearance, if you will. I think the North Wind is maybe the one who conducts what actually goes on in the nowhere rather than bringing them to the nowhere. And it's if the Ferryman and the North Wind are sort of back and forth in a lot, but it just seems to be more for control rather than one-upping, if you will. I don't know, I personally, that's how I feel like it's going. Let me know what you think about it. I think it's quite an interesting dynamic. It would explain why they did retcon the old comics. I hate the fact they did that because there are some juicy goodness in those old comics. But again, I do have a theory coming about specifically the enemies of the Little Nightmares world, and of course the residents, I believe that's dubbed now. But yeah, I do find their sort of dynamic super interesting, and I think we're going to get to see a good chunk of them coming into Little Nightmares 3. I think especially with the Sounds of Nightmares and how that turned out, I think they're changing it up and making the Ferryman be one of the main enemies within the world of Little Nightmares. You wouldn't have heard of the game without hearing of the Ferryman, basically, and I think they're gonna do that. I think the Ferryman has so many avenues and so many sort of areas he can touch of stories of different children, so I feel that's why they can tell his story a lot more, because he has to manipulate these kids into coming to the moor, and not the moor but the nowhere and things, so he will always have a connection to these children suffering, and I think that's what's going to give Little Nightmares that ability just to keep going and going. Whatever story they want to tell, they will tell it. And of course that brings us on to probably one of the most recognised characters at the moment, thanks to Little Nightmares 3. And, well, I say recognised characters, I don't think you technically recognise him, but it's a lot of chit-chat, and it's, of course, the Mirror Man. Now, the Mirror Man, we actually did get to see some type of visualization for him in the 2017 comics, and of course you'll see footage of that now, and it does coincide with a lot of the paintings that we saw in the Little Nightmares game. And I do believe part of Little Nightmares 3 is going to be focused on the Mirror Man, because of course we know the Mirror Man can transverse through the mirrors, and he can also do some shape shifting, if you will, maybe even entice you into looking into the mirror and then forming a different kind of reality within it. Now, I don't know if there's another world inside the world of the nowhere, but it seems that the Mirror Man has control on whatever you're looking into, which I do feel is a bit funny and quite unique. But I do think the Mirror Man is definitely a good shout going in, and especially with all the trailers and the usage of mirrors, I think the Mirror Man is going to play an equally bigger role than perhaps even the North Wind, if you will, perhaps even as much as the Ferryman, because the amount of usage on the mirrors and the fact that Lo can use the mirrors. And one thing I do want to say that I'm a little bit worried about is, what if Little Nightmares 3 is the origin story of the Mirror Man? Because we know that Lo can actually use the ability, and what we need to figure out is if it is actually Lo destroying all the mirrors that we see around the world of Little Nightmares. Similar to how we see with Mono, we get to see how Lo becomes the Mirror Man, and it's quite an interesting thought as well, because Lo is the only one that can safely travel through the mirrors, and that, I believe, is unheard of at this point. Because if we know from the 2017 comics that you didn't seem to sort of come out of the mirrors unscathed. Whenever, well, the comics depicted basically people who wanted to be something else, and the Mirror Monster or the Mirror Man showed that to them and then turned them into it. But of course, it's like signing a deal with the devil, if you will, and there's always a catch to it. And I don't know, I just feel like that is a super interesting thought, and I do wonder if we're going to go the same way as Mono Story, and we're going to be seeing the beginning of the end, if you will. We're going to be seeing the beginning of the Mirror Man. And that worries me a lot, because I like Low and Alone massively, and if one of those are going to die or become some character that we really aren't going to like, I'm going to be very heartbroken. And also, on that note, could we potentially see the Finnman return? It is a possibility, I suppose, if you look at it in one way. It depends, because we know we're coming back to sort of the area of Little Nightmares 2 or 3. I mean, 2 or 1, sorry. I feel like it's the Moor, mainly. We're coming back to the area of the Moor, so we are going to see TVs again. It's just going to be figuring out if they're cracked or not. And it'll be something to keep an eye out for. They did say in an interview they're going to be doing like lots of little like breadcrumbs for like, you know, for callbacks and stuff. So I think we might well see. And I don't know, I think that would be a really interesting play if they did do that. But let me know what you think, of course. And of course, one surprise entry, which is going to be a little bit... you can let me know in the comments if it annoys you or not. But maybe not as an enemy, but somewhere in the grey zone, you know what I mean? I think we've already said we might see Mono at some point, technically. So I actually think I would like to see 6 at some point, but not as involved with the story, more as a cause and effect, more as a, like, you have to do something, she's in the background doing her own thing. And of course, but I would be super intrigued to see 6 in some aspect, one either trying to help you or just basically use you. And I'd love to see where her story goes, because we would have to be sort of before Little Nightmares 1 takes place, perhaps. And this is going to be an absolute shot in the dark, ironically. But I would like for us, for Low and Alone, to have something to do with 6 getting her lighter. Now, I know that seems a bit far-fetched, but timeline-wise, that would kind of be good. I think we'll be quite safe there. But yeah, enough of my rambling. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what enemies you want to see. I love doing these little, like, talky videos. I feel that they're super interesting. And it's more casual, so you talk a little bit more openly rather than when it's scripted and it's really thought out and it's really thorough. I quite like these. This is my jam. But of course, we've got some Little Nightmares theories coming in the works. Well, actually, there are 2 nearly done. And also, I am doing a big old Little Nightmares essay video. And I think fans are going to enjoy that video, the way especially it's talked about and whatnot. I highlight a lot of the community and, of course, where, you know, the series is going and, of course, what the series has done. And that is a very big video in itself. Currently, I believe it's around like a silly amount of thousands of words. But yeah, I'm super excited for Little Nightmares 3. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what enemies you want to see in the comments below. I am thinking about doing concept enemies myself as well, and actually modeling them. So if you would think that would be quite an interesting video, let me know what you think in the comments. But of course, that being said, let me know what you think. As usual, have a lovely morning, day or night. Thank you so much for watching this video. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next Little Nightmares theory video.